There'd been some part of me that wished she would show up to hear me sing, wished she'd applaud me and be proud like a normal mother. I'm such a moron. I wondered how long it would take the story to make the rounds of this school. At my previous school, when one of the bitchy cheerleader types had run into me and my mom when we were shopping, a task she was barely sober enough to manage, it had taken all of one day for the entire school to know my mom was a drunk. I hadn't exactly been part of the popular crowd even before, but after that, well, let's just say that for once, I was glad we were moving yet again. I was 16 years old, and we'd lived in 10 different cities that I could remember. We moved around so much because my mom didn't want my dad to find me. She was afraid he'd try to take me away from her, and considering she isn't exactly a study in parental perfection, he just might be able to do it. I'd never met my dad, but my mom had told me all about him. The story varied depending on how drunk and/or depressed she was feeling at the time. What I'm pretty sure is true is that my mom was born in Avalon and lived there most of her life, and that my dad is some kind of big-deal fae there. Only my mom hadn't realized who he was when she started messing around with him. She found out right about the time she got pregnant with me, and she left home before anyone knew. Sometimes my mom said she'd run away from Avalon because my dad was such a terrible, evil man that he'd be sure to abuse me in horrible ways if I lived with him. That was the story she told when she was sober, the story she built to make sure I was never interested in meeting him. "He's a monster, Dana," she'd say, explaining why we had to move yet again. "I can't let you find him." But when she was drunk out of her gourd and babbling at me about whatever entered her mind at the moment, she'd say she left Avalon because if I'd stayed there, I'd have been caught up in some kind of nasty political intrigue, me being the daughter of a high muckety-muck fae and all. When she was in one of these moods, she'd go on and on about how great a guy my dad was, how she'd loved him more than life itself, but how her duty as a mother had to come first. Gag. I wanted to slink away from the recital before it was even over, but I didn't dare. It was possible my mom was dumb enough to have actually driven here, and there was no way I could let her drive back home in the state she was in. I had the guilty thought, not for the first time, that my life might improve if she got herself killed in a car wreck. I was ashamed of myself for letting the thought enter my head. Of course, I didn't want my mother to die. I just wanted her not to be an alcoholic. Ms. Morris took me aside as soon as everyone was done, and the sympathy in her eyes was almost too much to bear. "Do you need any help, Dana?" she asked me quietly. I shook my head and refused to meet her gaze. "No, thank you. I'll take care of her." My face was hot again, so I made my escape as quickly as possible, avoiding the other students who wanted to either congratulate me on my brilliant performance, yeah, right, or try to get the full scoop on my mom so they could tell all their friends. Mom was trying to mingle with the other parents when I walked up to her. She was too out of it to pick up on the subtle "you're a drunk, leave me alone" vibes they were giving her. Still, feeling like everyone was staring at me, I took hold of her arm. "Come on, let's get you home," I said through gritted teeth. "Dana!" she practically shouted. "You were wonderful!" She threw her arms around me like she hadn't seen me in 3 years and gave me a smothering hug. "Glad you enjoyed it," I forced myself to say as I wriggled out of her hug and began heading for the door with her in tow. She didn't seem to mind being dragged across the room, so at least that was a plus. This could have been worse, I tried to tell myself. I didn't have to ask Mom whether she'd